Most mamas who find their way to myofunctional therapy say the same thing when they arrive. I knew something was off. I just didn't have the words for it. So today, I want to give you the words because there are 5 specific signs, 5 things that you can actually observe in your child at home tonight that tell me a myofunctional evaluation is worth doing. And I want you to know what they are. Not so you can diagnose your child, not so you can scare yourself, but so you can stop wondering whether what you're seeing is significant and start knowing what to do about it. I'm Chelcie. I'm a myofunctional therapist and the founder of Breathing into Life Myofunctional Therapy. And these 5 signs, this is the assessment I do every single day. This is what I look for when a family sits down across from me and says, we think something is going on, but we don't know what. These signs are not rare, they are not obscure, they are things you can see with your own eyes in your own home without any special training. So my job today is to make sure you know what you are looking at so that if you see it, you know exactly what to do next. So before I walk you through the 5 signs, I want to say something about myofunctional therapy itself. Because if you are new here, you may be wondering what myofunctional therapy actually is and why you have never heard it before. So myofunctional therapy is the retraining of the tongue, the lips, the jaw, the breathing pattern, the function, the way they were designed to. It addresses the root of a lot of concerns that families spend years chasing downstream. The orthodontic issues, the sleep problems, the behavioral and focus concerns, the feeding and speech difficulties, and the reason most families find it late after years of searching is that it is still an unknown field. Most providers are not trained in it. Most pediatricians are not referring to it, which means most families arrive here the same way, by following a thread. One concern leads to a search. The search leads to a video or a podcast, and suddenly everything starts to connect. If that is you, then welcome. You are in the right place. And what I want you to take from today's episode is this, that seeing one of these 5 signs does not mean your child definitely needs therapy. It means your child deserves an evaluation. The evaluation is information. It either confirms a concern or it rules one out. Either way, you will know. And knowing is always better than wondering. So let's talk about the 5 signs. Sign 1, the mouth is open at rest. Let's start with the one that is easiest to observe. Watch your child right now or tonight when they are relaxed, sitting on the couch, watching something, reading, doing homework, eating breakfast. Is their mouth open? Not because they are talking, not because they are laughing, just open. Lips parted, jaw slightly dropped, breathing through the mouth without thinking about it. Here's what I need you to know. The mouth at rest should be closed. Lips together, not pressed hard, just resting comfortably together. Teeth lightly and slightly apart, and the tongue resting up on the roof of the mouth. That is the resting position the oral system was designed for. When the mouth is hanging open at rest, the tongue is almost certainly resting low, down on the floor of the mouth or pressed against the bottom teeth or forward against the front teeth. And we have talked about it in other episodes, what that means for jaw development, for the airway, for the breathing pattern. So open mouth posture is not a quirk. It is a sign that the oral system is not in its resting position. You might also notice that the lips are chronically dry or chapped, a child who always looks like they are mouth breathing with effort, a jaw that looks slightly slack even when the child is calm. All of that is the same sign. Sign number 2, snoring, mouth breathing during sleep, or waking up tired. And this is one I want you to pay attention to tonight. So go check on your child after they fall asleep. Is there any sound? Snoring, even soft snoring, audible breathing, a kind of rattling or congested sound? Is their mouth open? Are they restless, moving around a lot, throwing off the covers, waking up during the night? Do they sweat during their sleep? Do they grind their teeth? Do they wet the bed past the age when you'd expect it? And in the morning, does your child wake up tired? Not just a little groggy, but truly unrefreshed, like the sleep didn't do anything, like they could go back to bed the moment they got up. Here's what I need you to hear. A child who is sleeping well should be quiet and still. Snoring is not a normal variant in children. It is a sign that the airway is partially obstructed during sleep. And a child whose airway is obstructed during sleep is a child whose brain is not getting the oxygen and the rest it needs to grow, to regulate, to learn, to behave. A child should be silent and still during sleep. Anything else is the body telling you something. The tired but wired child, the one who cannot wind down at bedtime, who is exhausted but seems to fight sleep, who crashes hard and still wakes up depleted, that is what sleep disorder breathing looks like from the outside. Let's talk about sign number 3, crowded teeth, a high narrow palate, or even an open bite. For this one, I want you to actually look inside your child's mouth. Right now, or the next time you brush their teeth, look at the teeth first. Do they crowd? Do they overlap? Do they lean inward? Is there clearly not enough room for all of them? Now, I want you to look at the roof of the mouth. Is it broad and relatively flat like a gentle arch, or does it look like a cathedral ceiling? High, narrow, almost pointed in the middle? And when your child closes their mouth, do their front teeth touch? Or is there a gap between the upper and the lower front teeth even when the jaw is closed? That is an open bite. Here is what all 3 of these things are telling you. These are structural signs that the tongue has not been doing its developmental job. Crowded teeth mean the jaw did not develop wide enough, which means the tongue was not providing the outward pressure on the palate that the jaw needs to grow correctly. A high, narrow palate means the same thing. The tongue was resting low instead of where it belongs. And an open bite almost always tells me there is a tongue thrust pattern. The tongue is pushing forward against the teeth instead of resting up on the roof of the mouth. So these dental patterns do not happen in a vacuum. They are visible record of how the tongue has been functioning or not functioning. And there is something else about the narrow palate that most families are never told. The palate is the floor of the nasal cavity, which means a narrow palate is a narrow nasal airway. The child with the crowded teeth and the high narrow arch is also the child who cannot breathe easily through their nose. These are not separate problems. They are the same problem showing up in 2 different places. And sign 4, a history of feeding difficulty, speech delays, or persistent picky eating. This one asks you to look backward a little bit. So think about your child's earliest months. Was breastfeeding difficult or short-lived without a clear reason that ever fully made sense? Did your baby have reflux, gas that seemed excessive, slow weight gain, a clicking sound while nursing? Did they have early speech concerns? Are there sounds that they still struggle with? The L, the R, the S. Sounds that require the tongue tip to move precisely to specific places. And at the table, is there a short, narrow list of foods your child will eat? Do they gag on textures, refuse anything mixed or combined, react to new foods like they are genuinely distressing, not just inconvenient? Here's the thread that runs through all of these. Feeding, speech, eating all depend on the same foundational oral motor function, the tongue. A tongue that couldn't create the seal and suction needed for nursing is often the same tongue that struggles with precise articulation, is often the same tongue that cannot confidently manage unfamiliar textures. Feeding, speech, and eating are all asking the same question: is the tongue doing its job? If any of these has been a struggle, that question deserves an answer. And I want to say something about speech therapy here. If your child has been in speech therapy and progress has been slower than expected or has plateaued or been non existent, a myofunctional evaluation is a meaningful next step because speech therapy addresses articulation and language. It does not address the underlying oral motor pattern, the tongue function, the resting posture, the swallow pattern that may be making those articulation goals harder to reach and harder to hold. And let's talk about sign 5. Your gut has been telling you something is off. This is the sign I think about most because it is not a clinical sign. You cannot see it on an x-ray. You cannot measure it, but it is real and it matters. I am talking about that persistent feeling, the one that has been sitting with you through every pediatric appointment, every dental visit, every parent-teacher conference, that something is not right with your child. And you have brought it up maybe more than once, maybe many times, and you have been told they're fine. It's a phase. She'll grow out of it. He's just a picky eater. Some kids just snore. And you have nodded and left, and the feeling has never gone away. I want to say something to you directly because I have been here, that feeling is not anxiety. That is not you being a difficult patient. That is not you projecting or catastrophizing or whatever other word has been used to dismiss it. That is you knowing your child, and that instinct is data. It deserves to be taken seriously by someone who knows what to look for. Myofunctional therapy is one of the fields families find after years of searching because it is one of the fields that asks the functional questions nobody else thought to ask. And almost every family who comes through my door says some version of the same thing. I wish I had found this sooner. So, I want to make this very concrete before we close. Here is what I want you to do, not hypothetically, but actually. Tonight, watch your child at rest. Is the mouth open? Tonight, check on them after they fall asleep. Is there any sound, any restlessness? The next time you brush their teeth, look at the palate, look at how the teeth sit, and think back, even if your child is 8 or 10 years old, think about the feeding history, the early speech, the food battles, and ask yourself honestly, has something felt off for a while? Here's the most important thing I want you to hear. You do not need all 5 signs. One is enough to warrant a closer look. A myofunctional evaluation looks at the full functional picture: tongue mobility and posture, oral resting posture, breathing pattern, swallow pattern, the structure of the palate, and the bite. It is not scary. It is not invasive. It is information. And in the next episode, I'm going to walk you through exactly what that evaluation process looks like, start to finish, so you know exactly what to expect. But if you don't want to wait, the free training is where I would start. It walks you through the full picture, what to look for, what the process involves, and what is possible on the other side. So if any of today's 5 signs sounds familiar, I want you to know something, that you are not overreacting. You are not making something out of nothing. You are a mama who is paying attention, and paying attention is always the right thing to do. The next step does not have to be complicated. The free training walks you through exactly what to look for, what the evaluation process involves, and what becomes possible when the right support is in place. The link is in the description, and I cannot wait to see you there.